Bitcoin will overshoot at a certain point next year.
Hashrate kind of broke out of that 4-year cycle. That now it has a very high likelihood that the price also is breaking out of that cycle.
The hash rate has been continuously growing and at a faster pace than the Bitcoin price. It's only recently that we've seen that the price is outpacing hash rate again. After the halving a couple of times, the transaction fees were actually bigger than the block subsidy. You see these big spikes in transaction fees around the bull market top and bottom.
You said in the beginning that you work on an annual review of the year, which is super interesting for me. And this episode will probably come out either right before the year end or a little bit like in the first few days of the next year, which is perfect for an annual review. What have you seen this year? What are some of your highlights and what was this year all about for you?
Yeah, so the annual review is focused on mining, right? Because my business, digital mining solutions, is working in the mining space, and we offer various solutions to or services to miners. So we help them out with their marketing efforts. We do site brokerage and sell rack space, as we call it, on behalf of miners, and provide consultancy services, advice. But a big part of our job is education. So we publish a weekly newsletter, provide master classes, presentations, workshops, and then each quarter we do a quarterly review, which is usually a review in 21 charts. So quite compact, going over all these type of charts and then explain where we are in the mining cycle, let's say. And then once a year we do this annual review. And 2024 being a halving year is obviously an event you cannot go around. So we look at the halving quite a bit, but also at the hash rate growth. So how much the network has grown.
What are 21 charts like?
I do a lot of mining economics analysis. So I used to do a lot of trading. So when I got into Bitcoin in 2020 or 2017, I did a lot of altcoin trading to get more BTC, right? So alt versus Bitcoin charts. So I spend a lot of time looking at charts, doing analysis, and that I've brought to the mining industry, because there was not a lot of analysis being done while there's a lot of data out there. So these 21 charts usually starts off with a price. So what did the price do? We look at the fear and greed index. We look at the 2-year moving average multiplier. So we look at whether Bitcoin is undervalued or overvalued. And price obviously is an important influence on profitability for miners. But it also is important to understand where Bitcoin is in the cycle in order to know how to manage your treasury, right? Whether you're going to sell all your Bitcoin to cover your operational cost, or whether maybe revenue from other income or other streams you use for covering those operational costs. Whether you should perhaps scale out a bit of your Bitcoin position to gather a pile of cash in order to be able to scale up your business, your mining business at a later stage. So price is important in different aspects. And next to price, we look at hash rate, so the amount of computing power that's online and the impact it has on the difficulty adjustments. We look at transaction fees, which has been quite volatile over the last 2 years. Let's say there's been high spikes because of ordinals, because of runes and other protocols, and there's been periods of very low transaction fees. So we look at transaction fees, and then we look into an indicator which is called hash price. So that's revenue per computing power unit per day. On a fleet level or mining fleet level, we look at petahashes, which is 1,000 terahashes, and the machines are usually measured in terahashes. So we look at that hash price action. So how much revenue can miners get for the computing power they have, and where are we in the cycle also, because this revenue spikes up and down depending on where we are in the cycle. And then we look at the ASIC market, so machine prices mostly, compare different generations of hardware. So I think those are the biggest, no, the most important charts. Let's say we've been looking at ETF flows also, trying to put it in such an order that we can explain where we are in the cycle. So what factors are of influence for the revenue and profit of a miner.
That's super interesting. And I never looked at a chart outside of price and hash rate. I think like price and hash rate, obviously, as a Bitcoiner, you probably have seen somewhere like price is 100%. I think there's no Bitcoiner that never has seen a Bitcoin price chart. But I think most Bitcoiners also have seen somewhere on Twitter or somewhere anywhere a hash rate chart. I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there that says like, oh, what's hash rate? But transaction fee, I never looked at charts. I look at the transaction fee, but I never look at like the history of the transaction fee. Hash price, machine price is something completely new for me. ETF flow, I remember back in the days in the early 2024, I definitely looked at those and those were really interesting. But now I really don't care how much the influence of the ETFs, but it could be an interesting indicator. So my first kind of question for those metrics is, I think the biggest one that most people are interested in is what is the correlation and the connection between price and hash rate? In specific, does hash rate lead price? And I think Kent from SAS Mining told me a few weeks ago in the podcast episode where he was here, he has the theory that because hash rate kind of broke out of that 4-year cycle, that he now thinks it has a very high likelihood that the price also is kind of breaking out of the cycle. Is that something that you're even looking at? Is it something that you can read out of price and hash rate?
Yeah, definitely. And I know Kent very well. I collaborate very closely with Kent on a project in Paraguay. So it's nice that he was on as well. Like a previous hash rate would follow price quite a bit, because if price goes up, profitability for miners goes up. So it's more interesting financially to start mining. So then you see miners being deployed, which always takes a bit more time than price can, or it goes slower than price can move. So hash rate was leading or following price. In 2021, there was this so-called China mining ban. I don't know if you heard of it, but China decided to ban mining while the biggest part of mining was being done in China at the moment. Then hash rate dropped quite aggressively. This was mid 2021. And there you saw that price actually followed that drop in hash rate. So it was like a black swan event coming from the mining industry that had an impact on price. After that, price recovered, and also hash rate recovered towards the end of 2021, and then we saw something interesting, and that's that in 2021, in that bull market, there was a lot of funding for miners. So a lot of finance or money was put into to the build out of operations, so facilities build out, and a lot of orders were placed for mining machines. So many orders that there was a shortage of supply, and miners had to do future orders. So they would pay already for an order that would come in 3 or 6 months later. So towards the end of 2021, there was a lot of investment, and then in 2022, price started tanking. Right, we turned into the bear market. But instead of hash price following or hash rate following the Bitcoin price, we saw that these new facilities came online, these new miners came in and were deployed. So hash rate just continued growing. So there we saw that correlation broke. And actually 2022 was a very rough year for miners, because the more hash rate comes online, the more people are competing for that same Bitcoin. And at the same time that Bitcoin price was going down. And what we've seen is that as of 2023, Bitcoin price has started recovering. However, the deployment has continued, so the hash rate has been continuously growing, and at a faster pace than Bitcoin price. It's only recently that we've seen that price is outpacing hash rate again, and that's periods where you see revenue improve for miners. So the clean correlation that there was before, you don't see as much anymore.
It's interesting because we normally have like Bitcoin price religiously follows that 3 years up, 1 year down rhythm since it basically started. And we are now in 2025, so like next year in 2025, or maybe this comes actually on the 1st of January out, maybe we're already at 2025, where we have a massive up year. The same as we had 2017, 2021, 2013, this massive up year. And till now, we kind of follow that structure, and maybe we have next year this massive up year. But what we then also have is a down year in 2026. That's kind of, if price just follows the past movements, that's just what happens. Now the theory of Kent, and maybe you can speak about that, is, do you expect, or expect is always a hard word, but miners have to a certain extent look into the future and see like, okay, does it make sense now to sell Bitcoin? Does it make sense now to keep the Bitcoin that you mine? As you talked before with those things, do you look at 2026 maybe being an extension of the bull run, and maybe being the breaking of that 4-year cycle?
This is going to be this is my third bull cycle. So I've seen some cycles, and I think it's quite likely that we'll see a similar behavior, that Bitcoin will overshoot at a certain point next year, and that it will correct and then overshoot downwards, let's say. So that I find quite possible. I think for miners, we don't only look at price, but we also look at the growth of hash rate, and obviously the block subsidy. We just had a halving this year, but if you're starting to mine, you usually look at the cycles more in the halving year or halving cycles, let's say. I always, when I consult or advise miners, I will take that hash price to project revenue, and then I work with 3 scenarios: so bullish scenario, and a neutral scenario, and then a more pessimistic scenario, let's say, whereby the bullish scenario is even conservative. So I think for miners, you should always assume that revenue goes down, because that's what we've seen over the past decade. Let's say if you zoom out, you see that the revenue sometimes spikes, but in general it goes down. So you need to plan for that. And miners, they don't have much influence over revenue, right? So miners don't have influence on Bitcoin price, not over the hash rate, not over difficulty adjustment or transaction fees. So you need to plan your business focusing on the costs. Try to get power at a low rate, a lower rate than your competitors. And another way to influence your revenue is by working on your efficiency. So that can be the efficiency of the miners. So these miners consume a certain amount of electricity to produce a certain amount of computing power. So the newer machines are more efficient, and they will be more resilient to potential downside in the future. But I think for a miner, it's always important to keep the worst case scenario in mind, and not necessarily believe in a super cycle or whatever.
It's an interesting perspective that I never looked at. Like when Amazon wants more revenue in a certain quarter, they can make like a special Amazon week where they get like on everything there's 15% off or something like that, and make a mass advertisement for that. And their revenue probably spikes in that week because they can influence with marketing, with sales, that whole thing. But miners can get more miners online, but this is also capital expenditure, which then can neutralize the revenue. But if the price goes down 50%, and the hash rate still goes up and the difficulty adjustment still goes up, you have to bring up a lot of more miners to make up for that loss of revenue, which also then brings up your cost and stuff like that. It's an interesting aspect that I never looked at, but yeah, it makes total sense for miners.
Yeah, the cost aspect is super important, and then obviously a big part of your cost is going to be the hardware, right? So the machines you want to have mining. So playing that ASIC hardware cycle well is also going to determine whether you're a successful miner or not. In 2021, we saw machines with an efficiency of 30 joules per terahash going for at the peak around $120 per terahash, and these were 100 terahash machines. So let's say 12,000 per machine, and today you can get those for under 500. It really is important to time your entry and also think of an exit. If the market goes up and your machines have doubled in price or tripled in price, maybe it's smart to sell a part of your miner fleet to have a quick ROI on your machines and then have the rest running.
Interesting. So it's like even like a trading game on the machine prices. How long are those machines usually holding up? Is it like 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, so they say a life expectancy or lifespan of 5 years. But what we've seen over the last few years is that the efficiency of these machines have improved tremendously. So the older generation that might still be working well might not be competitive anymore if you don't have the right electricity price. So yeah, it's not only the hardware; it's also the economics, let's say, that determine whether you need to retire a machine or not.
Interesting. And you have seen, is it more smaller miner farms, or is it bigger small miner farms that also do that game where they sell miners if the price is high and then rebuy them? It's also seems to be like you have to organize it, you have to look at it. It could be maybe even like inefficient to look for those stuffs, or is the volume so big that it actually makes sense, even like unplugging them, selling them, going through the hustle for selling, rebuying them at a later days?
It depends on your cash flow, right? Like how strong of a cash flow you have and how much cash you have on balance. I think over this past year, it was a good period to upgrade your fleet or miner fleet, so get newer, more efficient machines in order to stay competitive because the margins were very low. Some need to sell then the older equipment at bottom prices because they need the money to purchase new machines. But if you don't have that issue, if you can purchase machines and hold on to the older equipment, yeah, I think that can be a play. Like now we've seen the demand for older equipment picking up. And in the previous cycle, we've seen, so in 2021, we've seen a resurge of older generation machines as well. So before 2021, or 2020, I believe, when these Antminer S19s came out, there was the Antminer S9, which was a very popular machine. There were a lot of them going around, and then when things got tough, these S19s were necessary in order to stay competitive, and there were a lot of S9s that were even given away. And when the bull market started and there was a shortage of machines, that's where the price of these S9s started surging as they became profitable again. So if you would have held on to those machines, you could have sold them at a good price later on. So it obviously depends on how much cash you have on balance and how much cash flow you have. But if you can, when you refresh, try to hold on to the machines to sell them when that bull market for the machines starts pick up, because we're still quite near bottom prices, let's say.
Is the is there any correlation between the machine price and the Bitcoin price, or is like how do the machine prices vary over time?
Yeah, so also there, like there used to be a very strong correlation, and in 2023 that kind of broke. That had to do one of the drivers of price for Bitcoin miners is for hardware is Bitcoin price, but then also the difficulty adjustment has its impact. So prices of mining equipment have been quite suppressed. There's a lot of mid-generation machines that are floating around, so there's a lot of supply to be absorbed still before we could see a significant price surge. But throughout this year, we've seen prices trending down and sideways. But now since the last few weeks when Bitcoin broke that 100K level, we've seen prices picking up of these older machines, let's say.
So it's more like a leading indicator, or like a lagging indicator of the price paired with the hash rate, depending on where the market is going. It seems like an
so in a bull market, it usually is lagging a bit because you have this big supply of machines out there right now because of the companies that defaulted in 2022 and the companies that refreshed or upgraded their fleets. There's a lot of machines going around now, so it takes time to find rack space for these machines. Building out facilities is a slow game, so it takes 3 months for a smaller site, up to 18 months, sometimes 2 years for a big site to develop, because you need oil permits and get a good power contract and get all the inputs. So the build out is a slow process, while price can go quite fast.
Interesting. And then there's also, I remember, hash price. You mentioned that is then the price, what it takes to mine a hash.
No, so hash price is the revenue per petahash, which is a way of calculating the computing power per day. So the revenue in dollars per petahash per day, and it's influenced by a couple of factors. First is Bitcoin price. The second is difficulty, and the other is the block reward. So the subsidy, which is currently 3.125 per block, plus the transaction fees.
Well, is there anything that you could learn from that metric?
Yeah, I think that's for many miners a leading metric, because it includes the different factors that influence revenue. So if you talk to miners, they all know what hash price is, and they probably look at the hash price chart more than the price chart of Bitcoin.
You say a leading. You mean in a ranking way, or it's leading towards decisions?
Both, I think. It's I think one of the best indicators out there to calculate your revenue, or to see what your revenue could be, or project your revenue. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can calculate. Okay, how many machines can I get
So
online?
you don't need to create an Excel where you project Bitcoin price, where you project difficulty adjustments, where you project transaction fees. You can take this indicator and then use that as one point to project out your revenue as a miner.
Really interesting. Sorry that I asked too much, but really interesting for me. All those small metrics that I never heard before, and what we can learn from then. The last one that I remember, I mean, ETF flows is also interesting, but it's kind of separate from the Bitcoin direct ecosystem. There are the transaction fees. How do you look at them, and what are you learning from the transaction fees?
Yeah, so transaction fees, each having become a more important part or a bigger chunk of the revenue for miners, right? So we've seen at the halving and also after the halving a couple of times that the transaction fees were actually bigger than the block subsidy. So it will be bigger than the 3.125. At the halving, there was even a huge battle for block space, and there were almost 40 Bitcoin in transaction fees. So that's massive. So yeah, these transaction fees are important for miners, but up till now they've been quite unpredictable. They've been spiking around ordinals, runes projects, and there's been this Babylon protocol where people could lock up and stake Bitcoin. So it depends a bit on these protocols and projects that are developed. Other than that, you see transaction fees spike at the bull market top and at the bear market bottom. So if you're not into mining but you're into investing in Bitcoin, transaction fees are interesting to look at because you see these big spikes in transaction fees around the bull market top and bottom. Reason being that there's a lot of buying and selling happening at these tops, and also at the top and the bottom there's a lot of trading. So people want to settle quickly, and they're willing to pay more for that quick settlement than maybe they would be during yeah, accumulation phases or other moments in the cycle. So these bull market tops and bottoms are profitable for miners.
Wait, so you're saying to a certain extent you can predict the top and bottom for bull and bear markets because the transaction fee spiking because there are a lot of buying and selling and moving Bitcoin around going on.
Yeah, so predict, I wouldn't say like you cannot really predict, but I think if you try to uh, play the cycles, like longer term cycles, that's what I do as a Bitcoin investor. I try to time the bottom as best as possible and then sell at the top, not because I want to get rid of my Bitcoin, but it will allow me to get more Bitcoin back later on. If you want to time those cycles, then transaction fees can be one of the indicators. I would say that can help you in time that entry or exit. So yeah, I always think you should look at various indicators in order to see whether the box is being ticked and the market is overheated or maybe Bitcoin is undervalued.
Interesting. I mean, I'm always completely staying away from trading as I'm just too frightened to lose all my Bitcoin. And probably you should also not sell all the Bitcoin at the top, even if you have a top. But you're still doing that, or you're now moving away from that?
No, I still do that, but it's where before I would do like daily or weekly trades. Now, yeah, I've seen that the more you trade, the more you lose. It's kind of going to a casino, right? The longer you stay there, the more you lose. So what I've been focusing on is more these longer term cycles. So I kind of learned when is a good time to buy, and then usually I scale in, and then yeah, when we're in that mid range, let's say, I don't do anything, and yeah, try to time the top. If I don't need to sell, I don't sell too much, but yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, at these longer term cycles. And for me personally, less trading is better, because it's always been like something on the side. I think if you want to be a good trader, you need to be dedicated to it and be focusing on the charts and be disciplined in your trading strategies.
Interesting. That's like I should maybe because I'm just going all in all the time as much as I have bear market, bull market. It does hurt a lot in the bull market and in the bear market because never have more to shoot in more. But it's just like my calmness of my mind is really a lot of value for like that. That's
Yeah,
the main
everybody
thing I
has
want
its
to get.
own goals, right? Like no own style. So yeah, I think that's most important. Think of why are you accumulating Bitcoin? I mean, if you want to accumulate Bitcoin to hold on for the next 10 years, why even bother trying to play the cycles? Because yeah, you'll never sell the top and you'll never time the bottom. If you do, you're lucky. Like it's always in hindsight that you can see whether you timed it well. But yeah, so each his own. But yeah, I agree. The less you do, the more calm you are and less focused you are on the price chart as well.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
Absolutely, and I like to focus on just providing value and just providing this and being there for my family and less on charts, as I also have no clue about charts. But that's just me, yeah. You also are, I think, if people know how Dutch sounds, people will recognize that you're Dutch.
It's hard to get rid of an accent, yeah.
Yeah, I will also never get, like, people will know that I'm from Austria, probably.
Yeah, I think if you're at a young age, you live in an English-speaking country, then it's possible, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the famous examples that some also compare me to is Schwarzenegger, and he has been so long already in America, and you can still hear it so clearly.
Yeah.
Like he took lessons, and his story is really interesting because he took lessons to get rid of his accent, because at first it was a challenge for him to get movies and to get into things because of his accent. Yeah. And people said like, oh, like that sounds so weird. It's you can never get in an American movie. Now it's his signature, and now it's like he's famous for that.
Yeah.
But he really wanted to get rid of it.
I think it's beautiful to have different accents as well, right? Like it's it's a part of being a global citizen, I guess.
Absolutely, it's really good to have the accents in there. And actually, I never had anyone complaining. Like I never had a single comment saying anything bad about, oh, your accent sounds weird. There are some comments that say like, oh, like if you say that word, try to pronounce it like that. Like people trying to help me, especially with elegant. I speak it really badly. But then there's even a debate going on, and someone's like, oh, try to say that word like that, and then it's like, oh no, like leave him alone, like he will never say it other direction. It's great how he says it, so it's fun for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, so I live in Argentina, and here, like, I speak Spanish as well. And sometimes there's English words that they use, and I need to pronounce it in a Spanish way because otherwise they don't understand it. So there's these little English words that they use, but then pronunciate with a heavy Spanish accent.
It's super interesting. I have an Indian girlfriend, and she speaks Hindi, and sometimes she learns really good German, but sometimes she, like, we are speaking only English usually, and sometimes she speaks like 1, 2 German words, and I don't understand it because I'm used
Yeah,
to
you're
listen to her
programmed
in
to. Yeah,
English, and then when she says a normal German word, I'm like, what did you say?
yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's
my wife is Argentine, and she lived in the Netherlands for 15 years or 16 years. She learned Dutch, which is very hard, and she had to unlearn how to speak because Spanish is very quick, and she uses a lot of gestures. And she would speak very well Dutch, but the Dutch wouldn't understand her because of her speed of speaking, and then also her body language, right? So she had to become this other person in order for the Dutch to understand her.
was she the reason you moved to Argentina, or was it Xavier Millet?
No, it was my wife. Yeah, she lived in the Netherlands for 16 years and wanted to go back already for a while. So we planned for it, and yeah, we moved counter cyclical, let's say. So we moved here when Argentina was really at rock bottom, and now things are starting to become better.
I think it was a. When did you move? It feels like you timed it nicely.
Yeah, 3.5. In September, it was 3 years ago.
That's a great move. How do you see Argentina right now, and then what's going on with Javier Millet?
Yeah, so it's been a very rough year. I mean, he campaigned with his chainsaw, right? So he really put in the chainsaw into everything. So yeah, in order for things to become better, there had to be some painful decisions to be made, and he really ripped off the band-aids instead of doing it bit by bit. He did almost everything at once. So we've seen inflation spike in the first part of the year. That was actually coming out of the previous administration, but then he managed to turn the government the budget deficit into a surplus. So that had a big effect on the inflation, and it's been now single digits month over month inflation, single digits for almost a half a year, I would say. Um, so there was a period where we had 300% inflation per year. So it's really crazy. And then also you see that the dollar and euro value has been stabilizing if you want to buy pesos. So the peso has become first it weakened, and then now it's becoming stronger again. So that's also interesting to see.
Does he actually go ahead and, as he said, destroy the central bank and dollarize the country?
Yeah, so he's opening up all types of payments. So he has currencies compete in order to see what comes, yeah, which currency comes out as the strongest. There is already a strong influence of the dollar here in Argentina. So the peso has lost a lot of value. So when I came here for the first time in 2011, something like that, I would get 12 pesos for a dollar. Right now, this week I exchanged for 11.50 pesos per dollar. Just to to get a grasp of how much value the peso lost in comparison to the dollar. But many people see the dollar here as a hard currency, which is funny for us Bitcoiners to see the dollar as a hard currency. People exchange the pesos they have into to dollars. They take it out of the bank because they don't trust the banks here. Many lost their money in 2001 when there was a big bank run. So people have dollars as their hard currency and store of value, and then hidden in the house or on a foreign bank account. Right now, one of the things Milei did was saying, okay, that you can. There's a lot of big informal economy here. So a lot of tax evasion. Let's say people don't pay their tax. People have money abroad that's not being declared. So in November or a bit before November, he said, okay, everybody can bring in all the cash they want from abroad. And they called it a blanqueo, so they could turn that black money into white. They could launder it, let's say, officially, and they wouldn't get any fines. So I think there was a very strong move by him because many Argentines took their dollars from foreign accounts, pulled it into the country, and now also they have these dollars and they're looking to invest and make a return on those dollars as well. So I think that's been a very strong move of his as well. And then there's a lot of privatization going on. So oil field concessions were privatized. They're working on privatizing banks. The airlines is one of the hot topics. They want to privatize the airlines. Eliminate the central bank. I don't know exactly what the status is of it, but it might happen. I mean, if Milei says something, it's very likely that he will do it. So
It's interesting. The move of getting money that sits abroad back in the country is super clever. That's just great. A socialist would never do that. Socialists would say like, "Oh, those bad people getting money outside of the country." Like that's a really great move of him that benefits the people, that benefits the country, that benefits basically everyone in Argentina, and actually pulls money and power away from the other countries back into Argentina. It's an amazing move.
Yeah, I think also like a lot of Argentines had and have money abroad because it was not safe here in Argentina. You couldn't have it in the bank. So if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you don't want to have that in your house. Or maybe you can rent how do you call it, like a safe in a bank or something. But there's a reason why Argentines were having that money abroad, and there's a reason why there's such a big informal economy, and that has to do with all the taxations that they're a part of it's still there, but they're improving it. But if you want to survive, or at least in the previous decade, if you wanted to survive in Argentina, being part of the formal economy is quite tough.
Absolutely, I do believe that it's super interesting what's going on. Is there also then no capital gains tax on any assets like Bitcoin?
Oh, no, that you would have to talk to an accountant about that. I know there's certain rules with regards to Bitcoin. I actually don't know.
Let's look it up. Capital gains tax, Argentina.
So with houses, so with real estate, it depends. So, when did you buy a real estate before you sell it? Whether you pay taxes on that?
It seems like there's like an income tax on that with 15%. Weird. Yeah, I also cannot find it out quickly. So maybe someone in the comments can.
It's still so. I know that there's people working on it, but it's still a gray area. Also, like depends whether your accountant has a real estate background or whatever kind of background is how they look at the asset and how it's being taxed. But I don't think a lot of people declare their Bitcoin here in Argentina.
I talked to someone from Argentina recently on the podcast, and he basically said there are really strict rules at some points, but nobody follows them. It's like encouraged that you don't declare stuff, and everyone is kind of okay and normalized with just being outside of the legal system at some points.
Yeah, so I think because of the socialist government that's been here for many years, like there's been an over regulation, or like there's so many laws and rules, like that it makes your life more difficult. So people start to go around these these rules, right? So and it's very normal also. Yeah. So it's a
Interesting.
cultural thing. Like I don't know how quickly it changes, but not paying taxes for somebody from the Netherlands might yeah, it's not that common. While here it's very common, and I even seen people starting their career that wanted to work in a formal way, but they were offered their contracts half formal, half informal, or completely informal, and then it's working against them in building their career also.
Did your I think your
I
internet
yeah
cut
yeah I
out a little
lost you
bit,
for a moment. Yeah.
but no worries. Really cool. Is Argentina a good place to mine Bitcoin? Are you mining Bitcoin in Argentina?
So it used to be because there was a big subsidy on power, right? So before everything was subsidized because the previous government liked to give away presents, and the subsidy on the power was taken away by the government of Milei. Um, so electricity became more expensive, and then that happened around the halving. So yeah, it was kind of a double blow for many miners here. So when I came here in 2021, there was a lot of home mining going on with ASICs, but also Ethereum mining at that time still. Uh, that home mining I've seen disappear almost entirely. Um, so mining on grid using the power from the grid has become yeah, financially not feasible anymore. There might be some miners using grid power, but then they're stealing it. Uh, the cases for mining here in Argentina is mostly on natural gas side. So there's big oil and gas fields here where there's um, uh, gas exploration going on that's being stranded, so it's not being connected to pipelines. So they start mining there, or it's what they call associated gas. So gas that comes out while extracting oil, and instead of flaring or venting this gas, it's being used to mine Bitcoin. And actually, there's quite some strict regulations here about flaring. So many oil producers cannot even extract uh, this oil if they don't offtake or do something with that associated gas. So those are the bigger use cases you see here. Um, that industry is picking up. So you see more and more miners building out, but it's there's not huge mining going on. Let's say like we've seen in Paraguay. So most of these natural gas field sites or flared gas sites, they're 2 to maybe 15 megawatts for a big site. While in Paraguay, we've seen sites that are yeah, 50 to even 100 megawatts. So it's a different type of mining environment here. But I think it's going to grow in the coming year. Right now, the biggest challenge is still the importation tax. So in the end, you pay around 31% tax on your machines, and that has a huge impact on the return of investment of your mining hardware. So um, yeah, as long as these importation taxes stay high, there's no way around it. Then yeah, mining will mostly be for Argentine investors and less for foreign investors.
Interesting. Um, do, How do you find what are you looking at when you figure out where to mine Bitcoin? There's also so many factors in that, like the price of the electricity, probably one of the big ones, but also like infrastructure. How can it keep up? What are you looking at in order to figure out where to mine Bitcoin, or what did you see that other miners did in the past?
Yeah, well, I think a big starting point is political stability and regulatory stability. So if you're not mining at all, I like and just start. I was advised to look into mining in the US, in the States, because regulation is quite clear, and it's gonna, especially now with the Trump administration, it looks quite positive for miners. If you're looking to get access to lower or cheaper power, for example, in South America or Africa, like Ethiopia has been booming. Uh, you can do that, but I always recommend to do that as a second step. Let's say to have a footprint in another region, and not necessarily to start mining there. Um, you see also in Ethiopia, for example, it's a lot of Chinese and Russian investors that deploy there, and they have an interest in deploying their capital abroad, and are have a different risk profile, let's say, than most European or American investors. So yeah, it depends a lot where you want to start and how you want to start, but I think that political stability, regulatory stability is a first step, uh, and then the type of power. Like many miners are looking for green energy, right? So if you have this ESG or sustainability goal, let's say, then hydropower is very popular. And in Paraguay, you see a lot of hydro production because of the big dams they have over there. Um, if you then want to mine in Argentina, then it's probably more interesting to look at the flared gas mining, because you reduce emissions instead of going for the natural gas uh, path, let's say.
Why are Bitcoin investors or Bitcoin mining investors looking for ESG? Is that like is that an economical decision or like a branding decision?
It's usually has to do with the type of investors they try to pull into their business. So it's mostly for financial reasons. So yeah, and then there's miners that want to yeah have this image or promote that they're doing good to the world. And yeah, mining has had a lot of critique on its environmental impact. So by tackling that issue right away, like at the power source, then it helps, I think, in getting clients or funding, for your company.
Makes total sense. Really cool. One more question around the topic I have. It seems like Bitcoin mining has a lot of similar attributes to normal data computing, Netflix
Hmm.
servers, AI data centers, and stuff like that. Are they kind of competing for the for the same land, for the same places? Is that like, because AI is will probably grow a lot in the coming future, but Bitcoin also probably grows a lot in coming futures. Or are you maybe already seeing maybe like big centers that have like half AI data miners and half Bitcoin
Yeah.
miners in them? What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, I think over this last year, it already started in 2023, but many, mostly bigger Bitcoin miners, so publicly traded Bitcoin miners, are exploring or already working in the AI, high performance compute space. It's very similar in the sense that it's both computing power that requires electricity. However, the type of data centers are quite different. So, whereby Bitcoin mining is a what we call flexible load. This is a power. Bitcoin miners use power in a flexible way, so they can be switched off and on, or powered up and down according to power available or pricing on the network. AI high performance compute needs a high uptime, so they need to be running 99 point, and you have even 5 nines behind the comma, so 99.99999, and that higher uptime, which is not required by Bitcoin miners, has a big impact on the cost of the build out. So if you want to run AI high performance compute, you need to have a big redundancy in your build out. So if the main power source drops, then you need to have generators that can turn on to keep your GPUs running. Also, these build outs of AI high performance compute, if you look at the power consumption, is less dense, so you need more square meters. And also the infrastructure is more expensive, and the hardware. So the GPUs are currently a hot commodity, while the ASIC miners are still quite suppressed. The reason why miners are looking into providing services around AI high performance compute is that the premium for power is way higher that these data centers can make. Let's say if you compare to Bitcoin, where price needs to be very low. So I think there's a lot of overlap. Both industries can learn from each other. You can integrate both types of compute, but it's not for everybody because it's really capital intensive. So you need to have a serious company, let's say, to engage. And it also doesn't make sense to just deploy half a megawatt of AI high performance compute. It needs to be a bigger data center in order for it to be financially feasible, let's say.
Super interesting. The intersection there. How do you look at let's say normal people coming into Bitcoin mining with not like hundreds of thousands of dollars to deploy, but like maybe a few hundreds or maybe a few $1,000s to deploy? What would you say is there a good? Is it a good idea to have, I don't know, 2 S9s running at home, or is it then better to host that somewhere, or how do you look at that topic?
Whether one is better than the other, I don't think it's very comparable, let's say, because S9s, they're very cheap. If you home mine, you're probably not making a lot of profits, especially with these S9s. So I think most home miners do it as a hobby. So they want to learn how these machines work. They want to reuse the heat. They enjoy that process. You see also a lot of BitX miners, right? These mini miners popping up. I think it's both the BitX and reuse of heat in your house is more of a hobby and educational tool than anything. It won't make you rich, let's say. If you are looking to deploy more capital, then there's different options for retail investors. You can use what we call a buy and host opportunity. So you purchase machines at a hosting service, and they deploy those machines in the racks and they run them for you. This is also a good way to start mining. This is how I started as well. The only thing is that when you buy these machines, you need to understand that sometimes the power goes down or your machine breaks down. So it requires some involvement as well. So it's less passive, let's say, than just buying Bitcoin, but less active than running these machines at home. But there's also other tools out there. You have, for example, a hash power or Hashrate marketplaces like NiceHash, where you can buy hash rate as you wish. You have these cloud mining services where you can buy shorter term contracts. There's different ways to get exposure, let's say, to hash rate without directly owning the hardware, because owning the hardware comes with maintenance, with repairs, and more active involvement, let's say.
Interesting. It's a good model to let it run by someone else, because unless you want to start a mining operation, mining farm, then you should do it yourself, obviously. But
These
outside of
machines
that,
make a lot of noise, and if you don't want the noise, you need to have them immersed in oil or have a hydro-cooled setup, which is more technical. So yeah, like I'm not very tech savvy. I have a economics background, a business background. That's my focus also in the industry. But so I wouldn't be able to run these machines at home, or maybe I will be able, but it would get me frustrated because I find installing a modem already frustrating. So uh, I think if you do it at home, like it's really because you like it and you want to learn about it. And I think the BitX movement is really great because it's a counter movement to these big mega mines and people that have this ethos of decentralization very high up there. But it's also a great tool because it educates people about mining. And what we need in mining is in the industry is people. Like the industry is growing very fast, so we need people from other industries, different backgrounds that join the industry in order to professionalize and mature further. Let's say.
do you think that Bitcoin mining will be integrated in like heating products? There's 21 Energy already, like there are already companies doing
Yeah.
that. But is that a future where you see even small Bitcoin miners just deployed in small devices around the house that you just plug and you use it as it is used usually without Bitcoin
Yeah.
miners, but in the background there's like you just connect the wallet and you get some satoshis for it?
Yeah, that could very well be. I did a keynote presentation at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and there I finished the presentation with the miner of the future. And I think the miner of the future, because of these revenues that are going down forever, like the miner of the future are not necessarily miners at their core, right? So it can be a utility that uses Bitcoin miners to balance the grid. It can be a greenhouse that reuses the heat to heat the greenhouse, or we've seen that with district heating as well. It can be a factory that has a big power contract, but they don't use all that power 24/7 at the same pace. So when the power usage of their production line goes down, they can switch the miners on in order to lower the cost of their power. There's different ways. You can think of landfills that produce methane that cannot be really commercialized. To use that methane to generate energy and start mining. I think the miner of the future will be integrated with other types of businesses, and might not even be miners at the core, but it might be a tool in the energy management tool belt of certain companies.
Very true. Really cool. Thank you so much. We have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and it is the question of what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Oh, besides Bitcoin, it's been quite a focus on Bitcoin, especially mining. What can you learn from me? Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a tough question. I think what I've learned living here in Argentina, far away, from a family, friends, like appreciating your friendships and your family, the time you spend with your family, so underestimated. So I think that's maybe uh, a lesson I knew already, but it's a daily reality for me, right? Being far away from my family and friends, so having the time to spend with them is very important. I think that might be a very Christmassy message. Uh, and then, like I find sports very important. Like I do a lot of sports, and I think that helps me at least to mentally get clearance on a lot of stuff. So taking a break from Bitcoin, taking a break from work, taking a break from everything by doing sports is so important. So not only physically but mentally, makes you much stronger, I think.
Very true. Yeah, you need sports for the mental capacity, physically, of course, also. But I honestly do it for my main motivation for doing sports is for the mental clarity and for the balance for my mind.
Just taking
That
a
you also
break mentally, right?
doing it for the physical part. Yes, it's great also, but the mental part is my main motivation. Perfect. Really cool, Nico. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the question for you is, do you think the goal of Bitcoin is to create the perfect money or just the best money?
I think the goal was to create a perfect money, right? Yeah, I would say the perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Bitcoin is already the perfect money, but we still have a lot to figure out along the way. But yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Nico, for being on the show. Before I let you go, where can people
Yeah,
find
thank you
you,
for
ask you
having me.
questions?
Yeah, so I'm quite active on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, because I am quite focused on business to business. And I run a popular newsletter called the Bitcoin Mining blog post. So if you look me up on Twitter or LinkedIn, you'll find your way to the newsletter. We send out weekly newsletters on mining economics, but also provide insights into industry trends and innovation. So I think that's most interesting for listeners out there.
Really cool. Thank you so much for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that's watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.